Thank you for joining us this evening. We begin with the very latest from the RCMP investigation into that horrible mass shooting over the weekend that left at least 22 innocent victims dead. Significant questions remain about how police responded, and for many, the central question is why was no emergency alert issued to Nova Scotians while all of this was happening? Here is Ross Lord with more.
As RCMP investigators, with help from the military, comb through the devastation of 16 crime scenes, there's increasing pressure on the Mounties to explain how they reacted, including why they did not initiate an emergency alert instead of using Twitter messaging. Nova Scotia Premier Stephen McNeil says his emergency measures officials were not only ready to issue an emergency alert, they were reaching out to the Mounties.
The protocol in place when it comes to EMO, as you know, the emergency alert, the lead agency is the one that has to put the message together. We would not go from what's happening by Twitter. We would need the lead agency to actually craft the message so that we could put that out, and no message was received, even though EMO had reached out a number of times throughout the morning to the RCMP.
Families and friends of some victims say fewer lives would have been lost if there was a widespread warning. But RCMP management defends its use of Twitter, saying they were in the process of preparing an alert when the gunman was killed. That was 13 hours after the Mounties discovered the first victims and had identified their suspect.
So a lot of the delay was based on communications between the EMO and the various officers, and then a discussion about what the message would be, how it would be constructed and what it would say. So
some people, though, did receive an alert. The U.S. consulate says it used the RCMP's Twitter information to send email alerts to American citizens in Nova Scotia. As they continue investigating, the RCMP say they have a fairly good idea the suspect did not have a Canadian firearms acquisition certificate. Ross Lord, Global News, Halifax.
The fire hall in Onslow was an evacuation center for people in Portapique on Sunday. That's also when it was peppered with bullets as all of this was unfolding, but the suspect was not involved. The shooters were RCMP officers. And exactly why that happened is now the subject of an investigation by the Serious Incident Response Team. Jesse Thomas has more.
It's all quiet at the Onslow Belmont Fire Hall, but that wasn't the case Sunday morning when a neighbor heard a loud bang.
It sounded like somebody banging on the door with a loud bang.
O'Reilly didn't want to go on camera. She said the incident was frightening and is trying to process things, but said when she looked out her window, she saw two RCMP officers with rifles aimed at the fire hall.
So I went into the living room to look out the window, and there was two now I know they were policemen coming across the street with a couple of big guns. One went toward the fire hall and one sort of sat in the ditch.
A pair of bullet holes are visible in the garage door. A volunteer at the fire hall said bullets damaged one of the pumper trucks. Another bullet appears to have ricocheted off a granite memorial out front of the building and lodged itself in the wall. CERT Interim Director Pat Curran confirmed the shots came from two RCMP officers, but he doesn't know why.
But in any case, they discharged their firearms, and what we do know is that the suspect, in of course all of those murders, was not there at the time. I'm not sure whether he had been previously.
At the time of the shooting incident, the Onslow Fire Hall was being set up as an emergency management office, a place for residents of Portapique Beach to seek help with the Red Cross. O'Reilly and fire officials said an RCM cruiser was stationed out front of the fire hall.
We need to find out whether this was an inappropriate use of firearms by a police officer. You know, our job is to look at instances where police behavior might or might not be criminal in nature.
CERT continues to investigate the fire hall shooting incident with help from Halifax Regional Police. There were no injuries. Jesse Thomas, Global News, Onslow, Nova Scotia.
We are still waiting to confirm the names of all of the victims, but we're learning more tonight about those whose names we do know. Loving parents, kind neighbors, the comedians next door. Elizabeth McSheffrey has more from friends and family.
Greg Blair of Truro, Nova Scotia, would have turned 46 years old on Thursday, and sister Kelly Blair says it would have been one heck of a party.
It would have been a good day. It would have been. We're going to celebrate still, which that's what he'd want.
Greg and his wife Jamie Blair were among those killed in the weekend's mass shooting. They leave behind 4 children. The youngest is just 10 years old. The couple were lovers of the outdoors and part of an extended family that was seldom apart.
It was always like me and Greg and Jane. We would always head to like fishing and canoeing when she was little. We did everything together.
People that was around always made laugh. Greg was like a comedian with his vocabulary. He was one of a kind.
And from Tatamagouche, denturist Gina Goulet is remembered as a loving mother and energetic extrovert. At the age of 54, she had beaten cancer twice.
She would go into a room, say a salsa dancing class or Spanish speaking class, and she would come out of that with friends, and she would go by herself. Like, she was so brave to do anything, and
In Sussex Corner, New Brunswick,
always good with stories, lots of stories.
Veteran and volunteer firefighter Tom Bagley is described as a talkative, approachable, and generous soul.
He'd stop and help. It was just a phone call away. If he was doing anything, he'd drop it and he would be there. And that was with just about anybody that I knew that he knew.
Tammy Oliver McCurdy lost her sister, niece, and brother-in-law during the shooting. She says Jolene Oliver, Aaron Tuck, and 17-year-old Emily Tuck had only just started to really feel at home in Portapique.
That was the place to where we really feel that they had been at their best as a family, and they were just happiest there. And then to have that all taken away when they were just feeling happy in their life.
She describes her sister as fun-loving and a voracious reader. She says Aaron had a mechanical mind and would spend quality time fixing cars with daughter Emily.
She got into welding this last year, and after what's supposed to be her graduation, she wanted to be an apprentice welder. And so she had a direction. She had a vision, and that to be taken away. I don't have words for that. I don't.
These are some of the names and faces we've come to know over the past few days, but there will be more. If you have a story or memory you'd like to share, you can reach out to us at globalnews.ca or through social media. Elizabeth McSheffrey, Global News, Halifax.
People are trying to find ways to honor the victims of this shooting while still adhering to the public health guidelines we're all under. Today there was a vehicle procession in East Hants. Dozens of vehicles took part and many people watched from sidewalks and driveways. The procession started at the East Hants Fire Department, where a wreath was laid to honor retired firefighter Tom Bagley, one of the victims. It ended at the RCMP detachment in Enfield, where fallen Mountie Heidi Stevenson worked. The hope is that a permanent memorial will soon be built in the community. The pain of what happened over the weekend is being felt across the province and across this country, but it is most acutely felt in rural Colchester County, the small, tight-knit area where it all began. Alexa Maclean is in Debert tonight, where people are trying to comfort one another and also make sense of this tragedy. Alexa.
Well, Sarah, I'm standing outside of Debert Elementary School. This is where Lisa McCulley taught for many years. The community of Debert is remembering McCulley along with another resident, Kristen Beaton. These Colchester communities are places where people don't hesitate to help each other.
Tight. Everybody was tight. And everybody will be tight now that this has happened.
Debert is just one of many Colchester County communities who have lost one of their own, leaving residents like Owen Slack trying to piece together how so much devastation could fall upon the town he spent his entire life in.
Her and her husband, Nick, got married 10 months ago, and they had the reception at the Legion. I was invited to the wedding reception. Like, I grew up around Nick.
Kristen Beaton was a continuing care assistant with the Victorian Order of Nurses. She was killed in Debert by the gunman. VON issued a statement mourning the loss of Beaton and another VON nurse killed in the spree, Heather O'Brien. Messages of Colchester Strong are highlighted through these communities. Slack says the pandemic may be physically keeping people apart, but their spirits aren't diminished.
Everybody's coming together. If it wasn't for COVID-19, everybody would be together better than it was.
Just down the road from Beaton's roadside memorial, the fence of Debert Elementary School is lined with messages for Lisa McCulley. She was a teacher here. Families, students, and colleagues are mourning the loss of McCulley through these messages. Outside the walls of the school where she taught and mentored so many children from the community. Debert is one of over a dozen communities in northern and central Nova Scotia in the middle of a complex and unprecedented police investigation. This residence burned down in Wentworth and is one of 5 structures police say they're looking through for evidence. While that evidence may not ease the pain of broken hearts, communities from Portapique through to Shubenacadie and Debert are standing strong together. And these Colchester communities are unified in their strength and support during a time that can only be described as a nightmare. Sarah.
All right, thank you, Alexa. That's Alexa Maclean live for us this evening in Debert. A vigil to honor the people killed in this tragedy is being planned for this Friday night. To respect social distancing guidelines, the Nova Scotia Remembers Vigil will be held virtually. The 2-hour event includes political, musical, and spiritual components, and it will be shared on Facebook and YouTube. One of the organizers says it was important to give people a way to come together as COVID-19 keeps us apart.
In a community like ours, a small community, everybody knows one another. A time like this is when we would be together at a church, at a community hall, at a fire hall, delivering food and well wishes and joining together in groups. And we can't do that, but we do have to come together. And this is going to allow us to do that in a way that we all feel connected. It's not just the people of Colchester and surrounding communities, it's the people in the province, and it's the people all over the country.
You can find out more about the vigil on Facebook. Just search for Nova Scotia Remembers or the Colchester Supporting Our Communities page. Meanwhile, a controversial sign on the Dartmouth Denture Clinic owned by the man behind this shooting has now been removed. The gaudy pink smile was taken down late this afternoon by order of Halifax Regional Police Chief Dan Kinsella. A petition was being circulated to the province and the city to have it taken down. Police say they took action because of the unprecedented nature of this tragedy and in the interest of public safety.